Hola.
Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. Next October 17th is celebrated World Day of Pain. We know every time more and more about pain, and we know that the physiological mechanisms of pain are not the same. How can we get the media to transmit these differences on the different types of pain and consequently their approaches?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Paloma. How do we get the media to communicate the right message? I think that's a really challenging thing because sometimes the right message is not necessarily the sexy message or the interesting message, and sometimes it's a counterintuitive message, something that's difficult to understand. So I think there's a responsibility for us as physiotherapists, as healthcare professionals, to engage with media, really sit down and have good conversations and try to help them to understand some of the nuances of pain, the new understanding of pain. Because I think if they understand that better, then they can help us to communicate that better to the sort of wider audience, because they specialize at communicating messages en masse. And I think if we partner up with the media, I think we can achieve so much more. We can, rather than in our clinics where we might pass on these messages to one person or to maybe smaller groups, I think if we use the media, if we work with the media, we can communicate to so many more people. But I think the first step is making good partnerships with the media, because I think the media want to help. They want the good media want to communicate the right messages to as many people as possible. But sometimes they don't know what the right messages are, and I think it's our responsibility to help them to understand what those messages are and then work with them to communicate.
How would you describe chronic pain?
Oof, how would I describe chronic pain? I guess there's the textbook response, which is chronic pain is pain which has lasted for at least 3 months or more and persists long after normal tissue healing time should have occurred. But I think that doesn't do it justice to what it is. I think it's many things. It's multifaceted. To many, it is something that's quite debilitating, frustrating, agonizing, annoying, awful, terrible. There are as many descriptions of it as there are people. It is such a personal thing. But I think it's also important that we as physiotherapists try to reframe a little about what pain is as well. Don't get me wrong, as I said, pain is all those negative things. But pain is also our greatest champion. Pain is our protector. The purpose of pain is protection. It's one of the sort of buzzwords that we try and communicate. And I think sometimes we all forget that. It's trying to help us. It's our body, our brain working with us to try and keep us safe. And if we reframe pain a little in that way, we might help to help the patient to perhaps reframe their pain just a little, to begin to see not just the negatives, and I know there are many negatives, but also the positives about it. And if we begin to see the positives about it, we perhaps can begin to work with it. I've talked to a lot of people with chronic pain, and I'm sure you have too, at different stages in their journey. And I tend to find those who are further down the journey, and would perhaps class themselves as recovering or recovered. And I want to define what I mean by recovering or recovered. That does not necessarily mean their pain has gone away, but for some it might mean that their pain has improved a lot. For others it might mean that their pain has stayed the same, but they feel better in themselves, or that they've been able to get back to work despite their pain. Talking to those people who would describe themselves as recovered in that context, a lot of them talk about reframing their pain and how they've almost made friends with their pain. They have understood the benefits of it, how it is trying to help, and how it has helped them perhaps to understand themselves and understand life a little bit better. They've learned from it, and I think many of them feel they've grown from that experience. I'm not saying they wouldn't have preferred to not have had that experience, but they've used it in its most positive possible way to grow. And I think, again, that's something we should try to help our patients to do, to see the positive aspects of it, and they are very hard to see at times, but as well as the negative aspects. I think if we can help people to understand that pain is trying to protect you, I think it's a first step towards making peace with it and moving on its journey towards recovery, whatever that is for that person.
How is the process of paradigm shift in the UK in terms of understanding chronic pain, and what have been the biggest obstacles?
To communicating about chronic pain in the UK. I think fundamentally the new science of pain that we now understand, it's counterintuitive. It's not an easy thing to understand. The idea that when we move, and if we experience pain when we move, that is not necessarily indicating damage, that it is safe to move. It's really counterintuitive. From our youngest age, we're told that pain is there because we've injured ourselves and we need to stop doing things. Now to totally turn that on its head is really, really challenging. And I think it's as challenging in the UK as it is here in Spain. I've supervised a couple of projects recently with students from different backgrounds. Africa, for example, another student from India. And what we're seeing is that the challenges that people have of taking on these messages, they are not really different from one country to the next or one culture to the next. They're simply throughout all cultures that idea that pain indicates damage is quite consistent, and so I don't think it's an easy fix, and I don't think it's specific to I think the challenges we've had in the UK are the same challenges you'll find everywhere. It's that counterintuitive message, and the best way we can counteract that, I think, is through consistent, clear messaging in a whole of communities approach, so that at the public health level, and by that I mean sort of preventative health level through like billboards and government messaging and TV adverts, they all say, be active. Being active is good for your health, good for your pain. And then we have primary care healthcare professionals especially physiotherapists, which I think are coming more and more into the primary care role, especially here in Spain. And saying consistently, again, supporting that same message. You're safe, you have pain, but that pain is trying to protect you. You are safe. It's okay to exercise, it's okay to move, and that's the best way to facilitate recovery. And then, if they go to secondary care or tertiary care, they get the same message. And then when they go to the workplace, they get the same message. When they go to school, they get the same message. Every area of society, if that messaging was clear and consistent, I think that would overcome a lot of the barriers. Because, a barrier, coming back to that, is the lack of consistent messaging. Going to one healthcare professional and being told just what you said there. Going to another healthcare professional and told, oh, you've got disc degeneration in your back, you shouldn't move. It was very bad, you're going to need surgery next year. When the evidence doesn't necessarily support that. It's the inconsistency of messaging. It's a huge barrier, but there's so much we can do now. We understand a lot. We have the tools. Now we have to think how to use them and use them well and consistently.
Here in Spain, in public health system, the milestone of this change was marked by Federico Montero and Miguel Ángel Galán, with the creation of the first unit of active coping strategies for chronic pain, Miguel Ángel Galán. Do you think primary care is a good level to start with this type of treatment? And if so, why?
So I'm going to pick up first on just what Fede and Miguel have achieved. That's a world-leading clinical institute. It's the care that service is providing is evidence-based, in keeping with clinical guidelines at an international level. A clinic like this would be perfectly in keeping with all of the top clinics, certainly that I've visited in the UK and elsewhere in Europe. This is exactly how service should be delivered, in my opinion, and it's a real credit to them. I give them a great deal of applause for setting up such an institution. I was lucky enough to visit it yesterday, and it was clear from the patients that I talked to and saw during the sessions how engaged they were with their therapy, and the healthcare professionals as well, and how active the strategy was. And it's those active strategies, exercise, active physical and psychological therapies, which we know bring about the greatest improvement. And I know that education is a crucial part of that. And again, the evidence shows that if you want to bring about enduring improvement, education has to be at the forefront of that. So in my opinion, they're doing everything right, and it's a wonderful, wonderful service. Now, to come on to your next question about how do I see primary care's role in the provision of care for people with pain. I would come back a little to my previous statement that we should be taking a whole of communities approach. So each sector, each group in society, and thus each group within healthcare, should be delivering that same key message, consistent message. But I think there is a special place for primary care because it is that first place that where patients truly encounter a healthcare professional where they're going to take on that information. And I think, like anything, it's like going on a date. It's that first encounter, that first spark conversation. It's so important And if that begins poorly, if that sets off on a non-evidence-based trajectory, then I think it makes it very hard for that patient to make a good recovery and have a good journey. Whereas if we get it right at primary care, it sets up a chain reaction for a positive experience, and in my opinion, the quickest and most lasting path to sort of sustained recovery. So primary care is hugely important, and I really hope that we see more and more facilities like the active coping unit here in Valladolid, that we see it throughout Spain, but also that it, I think from the previous presentations I heard today, I get from what I can pick up, because obviously my Spanish is not so great, but it sounds like there are a number of other countries wanting to learn from the experience of VEDA in terms of how we went about setting up with Miguel that unit, and then looking at their outcomes and how they are sustaining what they do. And so I hope that those conversations are fruitful and we see similar services appear, worldwide, because they are evidence-based and the best for our patients. So primary care to be front and center. We need more of it, and we need it to be consistent with evidence-based care, like what is going on here in Valladolid.
You run a campaign to explain persistent pain. Tell us about it, and how has it been received?
Okay, so you're talking about the Flippin' Pain campaign in the UK. So the Flippin' Pain campaign is a public health campaign which tries to change the way that people think about, talk about, and treat persistent pain. And it's heavily based on and with the support of Pain Revolution in Australia, which is led by Professor Dolor. And I always say how indebted we are to them for their ongoing support. The Flippin' Pain campaign has 6 key messages. That persistent pain is common and can affect anyone. Hurt does not necessarily mean harm. Everything matters when it comes to pain. Pain is a biopsychosocial experience. Medicines and surgeries are often not the answer. Understanding your pain can be key, and recovery is possible. But the last one being a little bit more controversial than all the rest. But when we explain it more, it's not controversial. It just it really puts forward that point that people can always improve, and there is always hope. I think within the chronic pain world, it's very common for hope to be taken away from patients, and I think that's the wrong way to go. I think if someone feels like there is no hope, there's nowhere for them to go, there's no point in trying. But if there is hope, not unrealistic hope, I believe the data shows consistently that people can improve. Sometimes it might be very small, and sometimes that improvement might look different to what they might have envisaged. People can improve. We need to make that clear to them, to give them that hope, which will then help them to engage in their therapy. But I'm digressing. So the Flippin' Pain campaign tries to communicate these key messages, and it's trying to do it en masse. It's trying to take it to what I would call a public health approach. So rather than in the clinic, one-to-one setting or group setting, it's public engagement. It's going to town halls, villages, doing online webinars for communities where they can come. Some may have pain, some may not, some may be carers, some may be employers. Everyone in the community is welcome, and we communicate our key messages. We try and do it in a relatively fun and engaging way, whilst being respectful of the seriousness of the topic.
Going to buy?
We do go on a bike, yes. So I guess we do those, we run those events in various different areas. But then every year to 2 years, we run a peloton event where we will cycle from over the course of a week across, usually for us about 250 to 300 miles. So we'll go to one village, stop, have lunch, deliver an event, go to maybe then go on to the next village and do a seminar that evening, and then we'll repeat that day after day. But as we go along, our team are continually using social media to draw people in and make them aware. But we also engage with local media. So in the case of the UK, local BBC and local newspapers, etc., local radio, where we will do interviews along the way to help people understand what we're doing and try and encourage them to come down and listen to the messages. It's an extravaganza of pain education. And it also includes our rainbows, which isn't actually a bus, but it's more like a tent where we have experiential learning. So what I mean by that is we provide the opportunity for just passers-by. So we usually set up in like shopping malls and car parks and stuff, going to where the people are. And we will engage with things like virtual reality and in illusions, visual illusions, visual illusions. I don't know how we can explain that any further without one. Or things like the rubber hand illusion for sort of physical touch illusions to show how our experiences can be influenced by our brains, the context, everything going on around us. And once you do that, you then, and it enthuses the individual, it intrigues them. And once you create that intrigue, you then switch the conversation to pain and talk about how pain is an experience influenced by, yes, our brains, but also the context, previous experiences, expectations. You shift that conversation and you shift so that people are just interested a bit more. They're only short encounters, brief encounters. They're not meant to completely change someone's mind in this case, but they're there to just pique interest. And then hopefully they'll either go online and watch what we have on our website, which is www.flipandpains.co.uk, or they might come to one of our events, or they might pop when the next time they see their healthcare professional, they might say, I saw an event quite recently which talked to me about how pain can be influenced by lots of different things, not just the state of our tissues. Do you know anything more about that? Can you tell me more about that? And that changes the conversation for the therapist. And that is kind of one of our key goals. So that when patients are currently going to their healthcare professional and they're going in with the old style biomedical structural pathology understanding, it's natural and perfectly reasonable for them to go in and want biomedical based interventions like scans and opioids and surgeries, because under that model of understanding, the evidence-based strategies that we have, like active physical and psychological therapies, they don't make any sense. So they're counterintuitive. So why would you want them? And that makes it very difficult for healthcare professionals to then kind of win them around towards these evidence-based strategies, and instead they find that they're delivering non-evidence-based strategies, these sort of old medical model type approaches, which we know don't really have a great effect. But what if they started seeing these messages everywhere they went in the public arena? What if that began to change their view towards, and they began to kind of think, well, actually, I'd like to try these active physical and psychological therapies. What if they went into care in that way? I think that would make a big, big difference. I think we have to finish.
That's right. Thank you very, very much for being with us and being our inspiration.
Thank you very much, Paloma. Thank you.
Thanks.